Hey everyone, how are you? I'm Seek in Canada. This is my frequently asked questions video blog, and today I'm going to answer the question that people always ask me: what is electronic music? And that's a really interesting question because for me, that may be a huge part of my life, but for a lot of people, they really have no background in it, or they've only heard a little bit of it, especially here in North America, where a lot of the music on the radio is rock music or country music. So electronic music is kind of new to a lot of people, and additionally I don't think we really realize how new electronic music is because all of the technology that we use is less than 100 years old. Synthesizers, keyboards, recording gear. If you think about it, I mean, how old is the internet and how old are mobile phones and MP3 players? Not old at all. So a lot of the technology that we take for granted is really new. And electronic music is based on technology and creative recording techniques. Most of the time when people ask me what is electronic music, I assume they're looking for a genre explanation. So I just say I play keyboards, as opposed to I don't play electric guitars, even though they're all electronic too. But what I mean by that is most electronic music is created with keyboards and synthesizers and in the studio, as opposed to traditional instruments that a rock band would use, like guitars and live drums. So if they want to know what it sounds like, usually I will say it's as diverse as world music, with all of its cultures and subcultures. And beyond that, you really get into technology and creative recording techniques, which is what it's really based on. It's a tradition, and it's a new tradition, and it's something that a lot of people in North America don't have a background on, because a lot of this music was developed in Europe. This is hilarious. This is a history book on music, and it's mostly classical music before Canada was a country. And this last little bit at the end is the last chapter on technology and modern music. And it's really cool to go in here and, you know, read about the technology that only began to exist when our parents were kids. It's pretty funny. So anyways, you go back in history and you find out when the first synthesizers were created and when recording technology first started to exist and people were creating methods of recording music on various different things that eventually became magnetic tape, cassettes, vinyl, CDs, MP3s, computers. Back in France, when all that was starting, someone was experimenting with not only the techniques but also effects like reversing and speeding up the recordings, which is a big part of sampling nowadays. So when I say creative recording techniques, a big part of that is sampling. And when I talk about keyboards and synthesizers, the first synthesizers that were created for analog, they took electricity from the wall and turned that 60 hertz cycle, or you know, whatever, I think it's 60 around the world, into through a series of filters into sounds, and you could play music from the electricity. Then they started to create analog modeling synthesizers that were software based on a very similar pattern, but it was digital, so it could be saved and it was more accurate. And after that, there are also computer waveforms that are very similar. They duplicate the waveform and manipulate that. So that is synthesizers, electricity creating music through keyboards, basically. And then sampling is where you take a recording. It could be a single sound, like a drum hit, or a quality piano sound that you put on a keyboard, or even a full drum loop. But what you do is you take a recorded sound and then you manipulate it from there with, you know, tuning, level, which is volume, attack, and decay, which is basically the length of the sound. This is a very basic early drum machine. It's not that early compared to electronic music, but this, my guess, probably came out in the 80s. Synthesizers came out in, I think 64, 65 was the first synthesizer that was ever created. And, you know, beyond sampling, there's also, you know, samplers and computers. You can manipulate sounds that you record. And then you get into mixing, which is in the studio, you add a lot of effects and you change the levels. And live mixing, which DJs do with the finished recorded tracks. This is sort of like a mini version of the studio mixer. What they have here is your high, mid, low, your gain levels and pan, and various other controls where you can flip back and forth between the tracks and mix them together in an ongoing musical experience. So you can also add effects and do a lot of creative things with this. So basically the electronic music is created through technology with synthesizers and sampling, and oftentimes you will see a live keyboardist in a band, either all electronic band or just part electronic mixing with other genres in live bands. So that's a part of the greater live culture as well. But in electronic music, many times you'll have a DJ perform live, or sometimes they'll take the keyboards out and they'll all be synced together through a computer and play live that way. So there's a lot of creative technology going on. Basically, all electronic musicians are sort of like ultra cool, futuristic, computer geek type people, really. I mean, I may not know a lot about computers, but I'm all into keyboards and recording studio stuff. So, on top of all that, I think one more thing about the technology, when you get into the live show, you can also add like lighting and visual effects, video, special effects. That's all done through technology as well. Many times there's a lot of atmospheric creativity and dancers, break dancers, and live arts. So it's a very creative process, both in the music and in the live show. And I'll just skip back one more minute to the studio. In the tradition of creating music, you know, back to this history book again, this is all classical music, but modern music is this last little bit here. It talks about how people started to create experimental music, and along with that came a lot of other styles, like minimal, ambient is another, and electronic music because of the technology. So a lot of these styles that were being created also got incorporated into the electronic music. It doesn't go too far into, it has a lot of different early composers. But one band that I think is really worth mentioning is Kraftwerk, because they were the ones that created what my friends and I call robot rock, where they took that electronic gear, and they often created their own, and they created that robotic rhythmic pulse before the instruments do that for you automatically. And that, I think, was the basis for modern dance music. They were the most popular German band back when this technology was new. So I think that's really worth mentioning. Also, it's worth mentioning that electronic music, because it's based on technology and creative recording techniques, there's really no limit to what can happen, both with technology and creativity. And a lot of it is very rhythmic in nature, electronic dance music, but a lot of it isn't. It's very ambient or experimental, and you can incorporate any style of music, considering that any music that is either recorded or, you know, any instrument that plugs into the wall, all of these are all electronic techniques. There is nothing that you can't use to create electronic music. So the last thing is it's always evolving. A lot of these styles have come about and created their own traditions. Electronic dance music, for example, has house music, trance music, drum and bass, breakbeat, a few of those different, you know, subgenres, which also have many more subgenres, but it's always being created and changed and new things happening all the time. So very futuristic sound with electronic music, and I don't know if that helps people understand what electronic music is or not, but I hope people see that it's a very creative process with technology, and that is what makes electronic music what it is.